The New York State Department of Transportation presents the DOT POD.
And welcome into the DOT POD. I'm Josh Heller.
And I'm Anya Cardos.
And we are delighted to have you joining us.
Well, we all know that first impressions matter, right? And as gateways to our communities, New York's upstate airports serve as a huge welcome sign to those who pass through these regional hubs.
But what many of our listeners may not realize is that the New York State Department of Transportation is currently spearheading transformative projects at 9 of those upstate airports to help modernize these facilities and help them better compete on a national and even global stage. And we've had the opportunity to visit several of these airports, each at different phases of construction, and we're thrilled to take part in this discussion today.
We're really happy to welcome DOT Deputy Chief Engineer Carlos Rivera and DOT's Aviation Director Lowell Lingo. Welcome, guys.
Thanks for coming, guys.
Yeah,
Thank you so much for coming. Let's kick things off by learning a little bit more about each of you. Can you share a little bit about your role here, your career here with DOT?
Your journey, as it were?
Your journey with DOT. Lowell, you want to go?
Yeah, they've all been journeys, I think. So, I've been working as a civil engineer for 25 years, 20 of those with DOT, bridge designer for a consultant at the beginning of my career, then a bridge inspector, then a structures engineer, designer, and then I went to project management and now in aviation, that's a journey for sure. Aviation's awesome. But we're just a little small cog kind of at New York State DOT. A lot of people don't even know we exist, which that's why we're happy you're having this pod.
Carlos.
Excellent. Yeah. So I have been working for DOT ever since I graduated from Union College in 1993. So doing that quick math in my head, that will make it about 32 years this summer.
Congratulations.
You look great.
Thank you.
Congrats.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I don't even want to think about retirement, but it's getting closer.
I do.
So a large portion of the time here in DOT has been working in main office design as a highway designer. I then spent a few years working in main office planning, and the last 9 or so years working in the project management office. So that's one thing Lowell and I have in common. We both work together in the project management office, or PMO, what is known here at DOT. And now work as a deputy chief engineer for priority initiatives. And somewhere in between those 31 plus years here at DOT, I managed to go back to school for my master's degrees. In 2001, I was able to obtain my master's degree from RPI in Troy. So that was great. I was able to do that while still working full-time here at the department. In my current role, one of my responsibilities is to manage the $230 million Upstate Airport Economic Development and Revitalization Competition Program. I gotta catch my breath. That's a long name.
That is a long name. Carlos, let's bounce off of what you just mentioned about this program. In 2022, Governor Hochul announced $230 million in funding for 9 upstate airports as part of her Upstate Airport Economic Development and Revitalization Competition. It's a program that aims to modernize our upstate airports and lift up the communities that they serve. Can both of you go into what does this have to do with DOT? I know people think roadways, and very often they don't think about airports. How are we involved in this program for those who don't really know?
So the program has been administered by DOT from the very beginning. And again, this is round 2. There was a round 1 in 2016, right, Lowell? I was not involved in that particular program, but also a very successful one. So again, DOT's been tasked with the administration of the program from the get-go. The competition was open to upstate commercial passenger service airports and smaller regional airports, also known as general aviation airports. And based on established evaluation criteria, this round 9 upstate airports ended up receiving the grant. These were Adirondack Regional Airport, Albany International Airport, Frederick Douglass Greater Rochester International Airport, Greater Binghamton Airport, Ogdensburg International Airport, Saratoga County Airport, Sullivan County International Airport, Syracuse Hancock International Airport, and Watertown International Airport. So 9 of them, all over the state. North Country, Southern Tier, you name it.
Well, and I think one of the things that's important to bring up here is, for a lot of these airports, I mean, we're talking airports that have been around for a long time and have not had updates in quite a long time, if ever. A lot of and we'll go into some of the specifics of what's being done at certain airports, but a lot of them, it's things that people may not even see, things like, HVAC, things like sewer systems, things that are super important and crucial and that just need to get done. Talk about some of the, the necessity that's there for these smaller airports that, people don't think of necessarily, but are crucial to their communities.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So 5 of the 9 airports were built between 1928 and 1949 that you had mentioned, Josh, and the others were mostly built in the 1960s. So the majority of the airports were in need of major upgrades. Really. I mean, whether, like I said, whether it's at the terminal, whether it's back of house utilities, sewer infrastructure, water, etc.
They need everything.
They need
basically.
Everything. Absolutely. Yeah. So. Again, some of the major work elements that we're going to see in these 9 airports, maybe we are going to see as a traveler, but some of the stuff we won't see because we'll be underground or behind the rooftop.
There are things you don't notice until you notice.
Until you
notice, absolutely.
And that is a problem.
So let me just go over a few of the things that people will realize. We're like, oh my God, wow, this is great. We're expanding terminal space for TSA security screening. That's a big thing because nobody wants to wait on those long lines and go through security checkpoint. Updating the airline ticketing, baggage claim areas, right? Those are all things that as travelers we all experience on a regular basis. Updating and or adding car rental counter space. It's important too. Every destination you go to, you need to rent a car. And adding more departure and arrival gates at terminals, right? That's we have examples where bump outs have been added to the terminal to add more seating space for people waiting for their flights to board the plane. And jet bridges, also known as passenger border bridges, right?
Yes.
Right. That's an acronym for that, PBB, passenger border bridges. Huge, expensive too, but much needed, very much needed. And obviously adding more concessions, amenities, because as a traveler, you spend a lot of time at the terminal. You're looking for a place to eat, grab a drink, something, right? So you need more of that at the terminals. Obviously adding or upgrading existing bathrooms. You can just picture yourself in a bathroom from the 1940s. And a lot of the airports are also creating like pet relief areas for the pets.
Yes,
for the
this
dogs.
is something new I've seen.
Can't forget about your four-legged friends. They need a place to go to, right?
Right, exactly.
And another thing that we noticed is creating a bunch of water fill stations. Where you refill your water bottles. Because it's huge. We see a ton of people. I see Josh having one of those huge stainless steel water bottles.
Gotta do it. Gotta stay hydrated.
My kids have those huge ones. I don't know how they do it. That doesn't weigh a ton.
Right.
Without water. But when you add water, they weigh more than a bowling ball.
Yes, that's true.
But everybody carries those.
It's so true.
Well, especially because you can't bring water bottles with water in them through security. So now you're like, refill it. But that makes sense. It's small. It's a small thing, but it's not when you're there.
Because it goes back to the passenger experience with all this stuff that this has changed so much over the past couple of decades. Maybe you can talk about that. Why is this necessary in our smaller regional airports?
Well, I think, since 9/11, right, TSA rules and restrictions have increased for good reason, but we do spend a lot of time waiting at the airport. It's a stressful time.
Yep. Going back to what Josh was saying.
Exactly, right? So having these amenities is really important to ensure. Literally one of them, again, I'm just going to go back to LaGuardia, but they had a screen, just huge TV screens that were just putting out pictures of clouds and flowers and little brooks just to calm everyone down while they were waiting in the TSA line. Like these kind of, you don't think about it, but they literally just reduce your heart rate.
Take a breath, guys.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so since we're spending so much more time in the airport, now these things become really important.
So if you think about it, right? So your flying experience really starts as soon as you drive into the airport grounds, right? So you want to make sure that your your guide signs, your road signs, take it to where you want to go.
And then,
right?
finding a parking
you're
spot.
looking at a parking, whether it's a parking garage or parking lot. Then once you're there, you need to find a parking spot. I don't know about you, but you can drive through all the levels of a parking garage to look for the one spot that's not there. So obviously that's, and then once you're there, you got to make your way to the terminal. So wayfinding signs to take you to the right place, whether you want to go to the airline ticket counter or just go straight to the TSA checkpoint because you already have your boarding pass with you. And then obviously, as we're saying earlier, once you make it past the checkpoint, once you're on the secure side of the terminal, finding a concession, a place to eat, water, and then eventually making your way to the terminal gate to board your plane.
And all of that is, depending on the project, being looked into. I mean, I know that some of the projects have parking aspects of it and finding open parking, how much there is. So lights that show you, is the spot open or is it not? So you don't have to circle for time after time
Absolutely.
after time. And again, it's something that just makes things a little less stressful for what's already innately a somewhat stressful situation as traveling can be. Just to take a little bit of that stress off is again, it goes a long way. It really does.
Yeah, it's funny how excitement for a vacation trip sometimes turns into anxiety because you're like, oh my God, I can't find a parking spot. We're running late. We get so.
Right, and some of these airports, as Josh was talking about, they're now coming up with new parking measures so that you can find your spot and you can do it efficiently.
Absolutely, you can almost book it ahead of time. Not necessarily a spot, but an area in the parking garage where you're guaranteed to find a spot.
Using an app, you can basically follow that method. Let's talk about the different kinds of airports that we're talking about here. There's 9 airports across the state. They vary greatly. Some of them just service private aircraft. Some also include commercial aircraft. Can you kind of describe the difference between those and what that is, and kind of get into the variety of these airports?
Sure. So we've got 18 commercial service airports across the state, and that's where most of the 9 fit in. But there's some, Carlos mentioned it, general aviation airports, right? We call them GA airports. Therefore, people learning how to fly, recreational flyers, they've got a little Cessna, single engine type planes, or you got private jets that are even coming into whether it's the commercial service or the general aviation airports. Those we have public service airports across the whole state, 131 public. You're flying in the air, you can land at any of these without prior permission. These, just one example I had for the general aviation airports, a lot of people don't know that one private jet can bring $2.5 million of economic benefit to your community. Right. So these are just some of these things these smaller airports, don't get credit for, but they're I think we already said it, but they're the welcome, the welcome center for the community.
Yeah, I business travel is important, but I think the biggest driver of activity is summer tourism, especially for these smaller regional airports. And I think this is probably true for the ones that we're working with, such as Adirondack Regional Airport, Sullivan County Airport, and Saratoga Regional Airport. A lot of action in the summer at all these places, and we hear from the airport managers that's the case. That's where they see the biggest influx of big private jets, a lot of money going into the area, a lot of,
That's true, especially with Saratoga County and Sullivan County as well. And that's just private aircraft that goes into those 2 airports. But Adirondack Regional, that also has
a small commercial
service as well. But do you, and also in the wintertime as well, like Adirondack services, all kinds of Lake Placid, Saranac.
Mm-hmm.
So that can make a big difference as well. Maybe we can go a little deeper into the other kind of functions that these airports provide, as well as spaces for like first responder training or connecting patients to specialized care. I know, Josh, you and I were talking about that.
We were up at the Adirondack Airport not too long ago, and remember speaking to someone and said, her daughter needed treatment, and they have a regional flight that goes into Boston. She was able to easily get her daughter there. But you think some of these places, are a bit out of the way, and having the ability to, whatever the service may be, but to be able to utilize that. and we talk about the economic impact, and obviously that's important. I mean, it's in the name, the Upstate Airport Economic Development and Revitalization Competition. We need an acronym for that, by the way. That's a lot. That's a lot. But,
that is a mouthful.
But it's right in the name, and certainly, and we've talked about it, and we'll talk more about the economic impact, but it's more than just that. It's, it really is, 365 days a year helping the community, and I think that's something that maybe goes overlooked a little bit, but is certainly crucial to those who live in that area.
Absolutely. One thing that brings people together is food, right?
Yeah.
The family gatherings and so on. And so these smaller airports have plans to build fully equipped restaurants in the airports that it would not only cater the people flying in and out of these facilities, but also the local community. People can just go to these places and use the restaurant. The locals that live around there.
That's just like
idea.
Adirondack Regional Airport. When we went there, the restaurant there is extremely popular with the locals.
It's a destination.
It's
Yeah,
a destination.
absolutely.
You get to look over the runway and see the planes coming and going.
Well,
it's a unique experience.
And if you remember from, I don't know if we talked about this, but from we had an announcement there, and the commissioner was there, and she talked about how her parents' first date was at a restaurant at an airport.
Yeah. Romance blossoms right there
exactly.
at the airport.
That's what we're doing. We're making connections.
We're making connections.
But you're absolutely right. I mean, it's a place that people go and get coffee in the morning. They go and have breakfast in the morning. But the community certainly does. It's not just for those traveling in and out. It's also for those who are living there and using it as not just economic, but also a social aspect to it. Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah. There's a lot of unique elements that are also being implemented in a creative design way in these airports as well. Can you mention a few of your favorites? They really reflect the history of various areas across the state, where these projects are going on. Talk about some of those, because some of them are very special for these communities.
Absolutely, yeah. I can give you some examples. I've been involved throughout the design phases of the project as well. Like I said, we were involved from the very beginning. Each airport, for the most part, has a unique design feature based on their geographical location, culture, or history, right? To name a few. So, for example, at Binghamton Airport, the new entrance canopy and the new hold room canopy, it was designed to represent the peaks and valleys of the regional area. So it's not just a flat canopy, but has the real peaks and valleys, which is kind of like a nice theme for the area. At Ogdensburg Airport, for example, the design of the terminal expansion reflects the surrounding community by making extensive use of natural wood for the building structure. And the same can be said for Sullivan County, which I know you were there recently. The use of laminated wood for structural members and having those being exposed at the terminal.
Yes, and that's a beautiful facility.
Because you have the surrounding Catskill Mountains there in the background that you can see from the terminal building. Now that you have windows all over. I mean,
yeah, that's one example of what you can do with little elements and glue laminate and it looks just like huge timbers. It's pretty amazing.
Absolutely. And another one, for instance, at Saratoga Regional Airport, we know that the summer popular event is the horse racing season, and at the historic Saratoga Racecourse, and the project there incorporates a statue of a racehorse surrounded by a bed of roses around it,
like the winner's circle.
Yeah. So kind of like a nice, unique feature to that area, and obviously. At Rochester Airport, the proposed Frederick Douglass Legacy Project at the airport will highlight Mr. Douglass's contribution to the community and the nation. Yeah. In 2021, the airport was renamed after Frederick Douglass, who was a visionary and an internationally recognized abolitionist.
You showed me some pictures of that room. It's really amazing. It's almost like a museum.
Exactly. So they're repurposing the current observation deck there at the airport, and it will be transformed into a state-of-the-art visitor experience with exhibits and displays, about the life and legacy of Frederick Douglass.
I want to jump back to, we were talking about some of the different amenities that are going to be offered, but one that jumped out to me when we were there was in Watertown. And it was the baggage claim, specifically because of its proximity to Fort Drum. There are I mean, Fort Drum, for anyone who's been around or to seen a map, it's an absolute, it might as well be its own city. It's enormous. And the amount of travel that they have to do and the amount of equipment that they have, I remember them saying that it would go into the baggage claim. It would just be stuck there for hours and hours and hours because it was a small little
One
place.
shoot and that was it.
Yeah, and so being able to accommodate something like that, something that's so crucial to the community, and again, these are men and women who are serving in our military. These are men and women who are protecting our freedom. Just being able to accommodate them to make sure that they have that experience too is something. Again, it's something small, but it's not.
Yeah, I agree with you. And the other thing that they're doing at Watertown International Airport, Josh, is having a new jet bridge, to connect the aircraft to the terminal without being exposed to the elements in the middle of winter.
Because there are elements. For those who've been up to Watertown, there are
North
elements.
Country, yeah. Well, Lowell, I think Lowell, you spent some time in Watertown, right?
I used to take so the airports along the Canadian border, Ogdensburg. We talked a little bit about Watertown, Plattsburgh, even Adirondack. They're all essential air service airports. And when I worked in Region 7 doing in the North Country doing the planning, I rode with Fort Drum soldiers back and forth on a little Cape Air airplane, and it was me and one soldier, and we're going back. That was back when they flew to Albany, so we're on the little 8-9 seater, and it's the pilot, me, and one guy with huge bags from Fort Drum.
Big duffel bags.
Yeah, he's like, you actually, when they're that small, you've got to make sure that the bags are actually weighed in the right spots.
That's where they weigh you when you walk in. Like, I think you should sit over there.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm not sure what that says about me, but all right, I'll sit over there. I mean, again, they're small services, but they are super important, and it also goes to show the uniqueness of the different locations. These bigger airports down in the city that we think of. I mean, they're massive but they're no more important than some of these smaller airports to the people who live there. And the people who live there deal with, what you said, Watertown, this year got 6 feet of snow in one snowstorm.
Mm-hmm.
You still have an airport there. It still needs to be handled and taken care of. And I think this goes a long way toward that, to being able to maintain this, and also to being able to prepare them so that, in the next 5, 10, 15 years, we're not sitting back and going, we're supremely outdated. We're looking almost 100 years that some of these airports have been around, and hopefully are going to be around another 100 years. So this can go a long way to kind of, preparing for what comes next and not finding yourselves, so far out of date like we have.
I think one thing that you mentioned before was, the value of these smaller airports, whether they were general aviation or commercial service. But we're talking about medical flights, right? There's angel flights that fly out of these general aviation airports to get people that don't have the means or the time to fly from the North Country, need to get to Logan, Boston's
need to get
airport.
Critical treatment,
exactly.
Maybe cancer treatment or critical care, medical care.
Yep. Medevac, they're all based at these airports. We had wildfires, right? And so we're basing aircraft and helicopters to help fight these fires at our general aviation airports too.
One of the things we also talk about a lot on the podcast and just generally here is, the effects of climate change, and we're seeing them. And a lot of these projects are going, out of their way to make sure that the changes that they're making, the things that they're adding, are also in line with those types of decisions, with those types of concerns in mind, both short-term and long-term. Can you talk at all about some of the elements that are going to be included in a lot of these facilities that do kind of fall in line with, with that messaging?
Yeah, sure. We have a lot of sustainable elements in all 9 airports. The aim to address climate change or help reduce the airport's carbon footprint. Some of the elements include the installation of geothermal wells for heating and cooling, the installation of solar panels, PV panels, photovoltaic, did I say it right? To supplement energy needs for the airport. Obviously, all the airports are either upgrading or installing a new lighting system that uses a LED instead of incandescent. It's a way to save energy. And some unique features in some instances. For instance, we have some dynamic windows to reduce the amount of heat and glare coming into the terminal building, which is kind of cool. It just automatically detects the amount of heat and so on going into the terminal to keep the heat inside or prevent, the heat coming in during summer days, that kind of stuff. So there's some technology also in these initiatives. We also have some airports utilizing recycled or salvageable materials from old terminals that were demoed into the new buildings to reduce the amount of materials that are needed. Some of the canopies are being used to collect rainwater to future use for landscaping, planting, things like that. Obviously, most of them are upgrading or utilizing more energy efficient HVAC or heating, ventilation, and air conditioning units on the rooftops. Installation of electric vehicle charging stations. We're going to see a lot of that too. And obviously a lot of new green spaces, to name a few, just to kind of not only make the surroundings beautiful, but the more green space we use, we're helping out.
So let's focus on economic impact for a moment. It's actually in the name of this program. Our regional airports, they really are essential hubs for our communities, but also for major employers as well, universities, all kinds of businesses across New York. It's something that's seen as a way, this program is, to really bolster our local economies. Can you kind of go a little bit deeper into the impact it's having, how an airport project can actually do this for a community?
One thing that maybe a lot of people don't know, but New York State DOT just completed a study last year on the economic impacts of aviation in New York State. And one of the findings, a few of the findings were that, airports in the state create 454,000 aviation-related jobs. And all those jobs are high paying and they outperform the typical jobs in the economy. One example that's pretty public is just Micron coming to Syracuse. When I'm talking to Syracuse Airport, this is a huge part of their planning, right? They're looking to bring in cargo and additional flights just for the chip fab industry. Another benefit that we found is that $80 billion of money comes into the New York State economy from our airports in New York State.
Well, Anya, another very interesting one, especially since you and I have been to many of these airports over the past year or so, and seen kind of the before quote unquote pictures, and looking forward to seeing the after pictures as well, and the stories from these places. As we've seen the renderings, we've seen what they're gonna look like. Can't wait to see what they actually do. Yeah,
it's really cool to see some of them in progress as well, because that it's exciting not just for anyone who's into aviation or pilots or anyone connected to that, but also for the communities, because they are so anxious to see how these are going to turn out. And I've seen it, talked to people you have as well. So it's really exciting.
No doubt about it. No doubt about it. So thanks again to our guests, Carlos Rivera and Lowell Lingo. And thanks to all of you for tuning in wherever and however you may be doing so. We certainly do appreciate that. You can reach out to us, podcast at dot.ny.gov. That's again, podcast at dot.ny.gov. So that'll just do it for us here. For Anya, I'm Josh. We'll be right back here on the DOT POD.